डिअर स्टुडंट्स, आज आपण इयत्ता 12वीच्या वार्षिक परीक्षेमध्ये विचारली जाणारी एक महत्त्वाची ॲक्टिव्हिटी पाहूया. क्वेश्चन नंबर 3B ही ॲक्टिव्हिटी म्हणजे पोएटिक अप्रिशिएशन. अप्रिशिएशन म्हणजे रसग्रहण. तुम्हाला एखाद्या कवितेचे आकलन किती झाले आहे, तसेच तुम्हाला कवितेची मध्यवर्ती कल्पना व कवितेमधून मिळणारा संदेश इत्यादी गोष्टींचे ज्ञान आहे किंवा नाही, हे जाणून घेण्यासाठी हा प्रश्न विचारला जातो. वार्षिक परीक्षेत सीन पोयमपैकी एखाद्या कवितेच्या 10 ते 15 ओळी दिल्या जातात. या ओळीच्या आधारे व दिलेल्या पॉईंट्सच्या आधारे तुम्हाला थोडक्यात माहिती लिहायची आहे. या प्रश्नामध्ये 5 ते 6 पॉईंट्स दिले जातात. कवितेच्या ओळी व पॉईंट्स तुमच्यासमोर असतातच. तसेच ही कविता तुम्ही वर्षभरात अभ्यासलेली असते. त्यामुळे पोएटिक अप्रिशिएशन लिहिणे खूपच सोपे काम आहे. यासाठी एकूण 4 गुण आहेत. या लेक्चरमध्ये आपण एकूण 6 कवितांचे पोएटिक अप्रिशिएशन अभ्यासूया. या कवितांची यादी पहा. सॉन्ग ऑफ द ओपन रोड रिटन बाय वॉल्ट व्हिटमन. इंडियन व्ह्यूवर्स रिटन बाय सरोजिनी नायडू. द इंचकेप रॉक रॉबर्ट साऊदी. हॅव यू अर्नड युअर टुमारो एडगर गेस्ट. फादर रिटर्निंग होम दिलीप चित्रे. अँड मनी रिटन बाय W.H. डेव्हिस. या सर्व कवितांचे अप्रिशिएशन आपण पाहूया. पोएट्री सेक्शनमधील पहिली कविता सॉन्ग ऑफ द ओपन रोड या कवितेचे अप्रिशिएशन आपण पाहूया. सुरुवातीला विचारलेला प्रश्न पहा. राईट अ पोएटिक अप्रिशिएशन ऑफ द पोएम सॉन्ग ऑफ द ओपन रोड विथ द हेल्प ऑफ द फॉलोइंग पॉईंट्स. दिलेले पॉईंट्स पहा. About the poem, poet and title. The theme of the poem, the language and poetic style, special features, message and morals in the poem, your opinion about the poem. या दिलेल्या 6 पॉईंट्सच्या आधारे आपण इथं पोएटिक अप्रिशिएशन लिहिणं अपेक्षित आहे. आता याचं एक नमुना उत्तर पहा. About the poem, poet and the title. The poem Song of the Open Road is written by an American poet Walt Whitman. This is a motivational poem written in the form of narration. The poet is the speaker in this poem. Walt Whitman was an American poet, essayist and journalist. He is also known as the father of free verse. His major work, Leaves of Grass, was published in July 1855. The poem Song of the Open Road is taken from Leaves of Grass. The title Song of the Open Road is symbolic. The open road indicates freedom in life. Here, road stands for the road of life. Theme of the poem. The theme of the poem is self-realization, freedom, and tenderness of heart. The poet motivates the readers to ignore criticism and to be a confident person. Our problems and difficulties are delicious burdens. The poet tells us, though there are thousands of problems, we may enjoy our journey of life. Point number 3 पहा. The language and poetic devices. The language of the poem is very simple. The poem is written in form of narration. The personal pronoun I in the poem stands for the poet or speaker. The poem is also an example of free verse, metaphor, paradox, repetition. Such poetic devices are used in the poem. चौथा पॉइंट पहा. Special features. The poem has some special features. The poet used the technique of parenthesis by putting the last stanza in brackets. Here, the poet separates himself from the others. The personal pronoun I stands for the poet or the speaker or every individual. Message and morals in the poem. The poem gives us the message of optimistic life. The poet tells us to be happy and ignore our critics. Though there are burdens, we may enjoy the freedom of life. The poem also teaches the importance of self-realization and self-confidence in our lives. आणि शेवटचा पॉईंट असतो पहा. माय ओपिनियन अबाउट द पोएम. I think the poem Song of the Open Road is very interesting as well as philosophical. It teaches me the philosophy of life and wisdom of life, which is not taught in any school or college. I liked the metaphor road, which stands for the road of life. The poem motivates me to enjoy the journey of life. अशा प्रकारे आपण या दिलेल्या 6 पॉईंट्सच्या आधारे अप्रिशिएशन लिहू शकतो. यानंतर जे आपली दुसरी पोएम आहे इंडियन व्ह्युअर्स रिटन बाय सरोजिनी नायडू. आता या कवितेचे जे काही आहे पोएटिक अप्रिशिएशन ते आपण पाहूया. दिलेले जे पॉईंट्स आहेत ते जवळपास पॉईंट 6 सारखेच आहेत, पॉईंट्स तेच आहेत. इंडियन व्ह्युअर्स अप्रिशिएशन सी पॉईंट नंबर 1 about the poem Poet and Title. Indian Viewers is a poem written by Sarojini Naidu. The poem is taken from her first volume of poetry, The Golden Threshold, published in 1905. The poem has 3 quatrains. Quatrains means stanza of 4 lines. It depicts the 3 stages of human life: birth, adulthood, and death. About the poem, poet, and the title. Sarojini Naidu was a political activist. She took part in the Indian freedom struggle. She was the first woman who became the president of the Indian National Congress. She is also known as the Nightingale of India. She was a feminist who fought for the rights of women. The title of the poem reveals the characters in the poem and their location. The readers understand that there are viewers in the poem and they are Indian. The title of the poem reveals Indian social scenario. अशा प्रकारे आपण पोयम, पोएट आणि टायटल यांच्याविषयी माहिती सांगू शकतो. यानंतर पहा सेकंड पॉइंट द थीम. द पोयम symbolizes the various stages of life. The poet attributes different colors and different parts of the day to these stages. The viewers view a blue dress for a newborn baby in the morning. They view a green and purple marriage veil for a queen in the evening, and a white funeral shroud for a dead person at night. Birth, adulthood, and death are the 3 stages of human life depicted in this poem. नंतर पहा पॉइंट नंबर 3 the language and poetic devices. The poem Indian Viewers is written in iambic tetrameter. There are 3 stanzas having the rhyme scheme of A A B B C C D D E E F F. In every stanza, there is a question asked by the poet and the viewers give the answers. Simile, metaphor, alliteration, inversion, such devices make the poem more decorative. All the stanzas contain color imagery. Special features of the poem. The poem is written in a dialogue form. The poet asks questions to the Indian viewers and the viewers reply her. This is the contextual meaning of the poem, but the poem has a deeper meaning. Symbolically, the poem represents 3 stages of human life. The poem also refers to the cycle of life and death. The poem has 2 meanings: surface meaning and deeper meaning. Message and morals in the poem. The poem depicts the 3 stages of human life. We understand each stage of life is unique. Emotions related to that life stage. The poem gives the message of the perpetual motion of life. The poem teaches the universal truths of human life. My opinion about the poem. I learned the poem and enjoyed it. This is a short poem with rhyme and rhythmic beauty. The poem is full with imagery and other poetic devices. I love such beautiful and attractive expressions. The deeper meaning of the poem gives a philosophical touch to it. Really, I enjoyed the poem by learning the surface meaning and the deeper meaning. Now, in this way, we may write appreciation of Indian viewers. Then, poem number 3, The Inchcape Rock, written by रॉबर्ट साऊदी. दिलेले जे काही पॉईंट्स आहेत ते पॉईंट्स जवळपास सारखेच आहेत. एकूण 6 पॉईंट्स आहेत. नाव सी पॉईंट नंबर 1 अबाउट द पोएम, पोएट अँड टायटल. The Inchcape Rock is a long narrative poem of 17 stanzas written by Robert Southey. He was the poet laureate of England from 1813 to 1843. His poems are didactic in nature. The Inchcape Rock is also a poem with a moral lesson. The poem is an example of ballad. The poet was inspired by the legendary story of a sea pirate who got punishment of his own wrongdoings. The title of the poem shows the place where the story took place. The Inchcape Rock is a notorious sandstone reef about 11 miles off the east coast of Angus, Scotland. The poem The Inchcape Rock is didactic in nature. The theme of the poem is that those who do bad things will ultimately be punished. There is poetic justice in life. We learn the message. As we sow, so shall you reap. Evil digs a pit for others but falls into the same. Now this is about theme of the poem. The language and poetic devices. Robert Southey used decorative language in this poem. The poem is an example of a ballad. There are 17 quatrains. This is a long narrative poem with the rhyme scheme AABB. Simile, metaphor, alliteration, antithesis, personification, onomatopoeia. Such devices make the poem more decorative. Story in brief. Now, story of the poem. The abbot of Aberbrothock placed a bell on the Inchcape Rock to avoid the sea accidents and to guide the mariners. While traveling, the mariners would listen the Inchcape bell and they would understand the location of the dangerous rock. They would bless the abbot for his good work. Sir Ralph the Rover was a sea pirate. One fine day, he spotted the Inchcape bell. Because of the feeling of jealousy, he cut the bell from the boy. He thought that now nobody will bless the abbot of Aberbrothock. The sea pirate, Sir Ralph the Rover, robbed many ships and became rich. One day, he decides to move towards the Scotland shore. While traveling to Scotland, the weather was not good. Sir Ralph and his crewmen were unable to see the land. The ship collided to something and they understood that it is the Inchcape Rock. Sir Ralph blamed himself for his act of cutting off the Inchcape bell. He lost his life. His ship sank beneath the tide. Message and morals in the poem. The poem conveys a moral lesson through the story depicted in it. The wicked sea pirate, Sir Ralph the Rover, received the punishment because of his wrongdoings. He got poetic justice. As you sow, so shall you reap, is the moral lesson of the poem. My opinion about the poem. I learned the poem and enjoyed it. This is a long narrative poem with rhyme scheme and rhythmic beauty. The poem has many poetic devices and attractive expressions. The poem taught me the lesson to give up jealousy. I will remember the moral lesson. Evil digs a pit for others but falls into the same. In Hindi, it is rightly said that जैसी करनी वैसी भरणी. यानंतर पुढची पोएम आहे पहा, हॅव यू अर्न युअर टुमारो, रिटन बाय एडगर गॅस्ट. या ठिकाणी सुद्धा दिलेले पॉईंट्स एकूण 6 आहेत. या पॉईंट्सच्या आधारे आपण अप्रिशिएशन लिहू शकतो. याचं उत्तर पहा. अबाउट द पोएम, पोएट अँड द टायटल. हॅव यू अर्न युअर टुमारो is a famous motivational poem written by Edgar Guest. In this poem, the poet is asking the readers whether they have done something good for others. This is a short poem of 4 quatrains. You know, quatrain is a stanza of 4 lines. The poem of 4 quatrains, that is stanzas of 4 lines. The poem guides all the readers for self evaluation, and inspires us to be a good human being. The poet Edgar Guest was born in England and was brought to the US when he was 10 years old. He began his writing career at the age of 14. He is known as People's Poet for his simple style and optimistic tone of writing. The title of the poem is a direct question to the readers. After learning the poem, the readers understand the answer. If we do some good deeds or actions today, our tomorrow will be earned. The title suggests that we should do self introspection. सेल्फ इंट्रोस्पेक्शन म्हणजे आत्मपरीक्षण. कविता आपणाला आत्मपरीक्षण करण्यासाठी प्रवृत्त करते. थीम ऑफ द पोएम. The theme of the poem is explained in various questions. The poet asks simple questions to the readers about how they treat the people who come across in their lives. All the questions are asked for self evaluation and self introspection of the readers. The poem motivates the readers to be kind and helpful to others. Our good deeds will earn our tomorrow. Number 3. The language and poetic devices. The poem is written in rhyming couplets and contains 4 quatrains, 4 stanzas of 4 lines each. Interrogation is the prominent figure of speech used in the poem. The poet also employs a number of poetic devices in the poem, like alliteration, antithesis, personification, etc. The poet Edgar Guest is also known as People's Poet because of his simple writing style. Special features. The special feature of the poem is the use of probing questions. There are 13 questions in the poem of 16 lines. Another special feature of the poem is the use of visual imagery, vanishing in the throng, sleeping fast, close your eyes in slumber. Such expressions of visual imagery make the poem more attractive. Message and morals in the poem. Have You Earned Your Tomorrow is a motivational and didactic poem. The poem motivates the readers for doing good deeds to others. We should give up negative actions and negative thoughts. The poem is also helpful to us in the process of self introspection. We may bring positive change in our behavior and we may not become sorry and we may become better citizens with the help of self introspection. According to the poet, our small good deeds are enough to guarantee our better tomorrow. Last point, my opinion about the poem. The poem Have You Earned Your Tomorrow is written by the people's poet Edgar Guest. The poet tries to motivate people for good deeds. I liked the technique of interrogation used in the poem. The poet conveys his thoughts with the help of these probing questions. The poem is written in simple language. I learned the poem and I enjoyed it. Now, in this way, we may write appreciation of this poem. Have you earned your tomorrow? पोएट्री सेक्शनमधील 5वी कविता आहे फादर रिटर्निंग होम, रिटन बाय दिलीप चित्रे. या कवितेचे आपण पोएटिक अप्रिशिएशन पाहूया. दिलेले पॉईंट्स आहेत पहा. अबाउट द पोएम, पोएट अँड टायटल. द थीम, लँग्वेज स्टाईल अँड पोएटिक डिव्हायसेस. स्पेशल फीचर्स, मेसेज अँड मॉरल्स इन द पोएम, युअर ओपिनियन अबाउट द पोएम. या दिलेल्या 6 पॉईंट्सच्या आधारे इथं आपण अप्रिशिएशन लिहायचं आहे. याचं एक नमुना उत्तर पहा. अबाउट द पोएम, पोएट अँड टायटल. फादर रिटर्निंग होम is a well-known poem written by Dilip Chitre. He was a bilingual poet who wrote in Marathi and English. Father is the backbone of every family. This is an autobiographical poem. Here, the poet describes his father's daily routine. Theme. In this poem, the poet depicts his father's dull, monotonous, and pitiable daily routine. Though the father lives in crowd, he is alienated from the materialistic man-made world. Alienation is the dominant theme of this poem. Poetic devices or language style. The poem is an example of free verse. The poetic lines depict the miserable life of the father. The language is very simple. The poet uses many poetic devices like metaphor, simile, transfer epithet, alliteration, onomatopoeia, etc. The poet uses imagery throughout the poem. Special features. The use of enjambment is the special feature of the poem. In enjambment, one line of the poem continues into the next. It indicates the worsening state of the father. Message and morals in the poem. The poem depicts sorrowful life of the elderly people. Though they work hard for the family, they are ignored and disrespected by their family members. The poem gives the message of family values. We should be friendly to the elderly people. It's our duty to take care of graying population. Last point is my opinion about the poem. I think the poem is relevant to the modern world. This is a pathetic poem in simple language. It gives a valuable message to the young generation. Now, in this way, we may write appreciation of the poem with the help of these 6 points. Now, poem number 6, Money, written by W.H. Davis. आता या कविते संदर्भामध्ये अप्रिशिएशन लिहित असताना पहा या ठिकाणी सुद्धा दिलेले पॉईंट्स हे सारखेच असतील. 6 पॉईंट्स आहेत. यातला पहिला पॉईंट पहा, अबाउट द पोएम, पोएट अँड टायटल. The poem Money is written by W.H. Davis. The poet was a tramp who wandered in the UK and the United States. He actually experienced the life of a poor man. This is a poem of 5 stanzas that deals with money and happiness. Theme of the poem. The theme of the poem is the inverse relation between money and happiness. The poet thinks that the poor people are happier than the rich. The poet had many false friends when he was a rich man. He had true friends when he became a poor man. Poetic style. The poem has 5 stanzas of 4 lines each. The poet has used many devices to make the poem decorative. Inversion, simile, repetition, onomatopoeia, alliteration. Such devices make the poem more decorative. Nandar point number 4, special features. The use of enjambment is a special feature of the poem. Usually, people give too much importance to money. The poet is surprised by this act, so he uses an exclamatory mark and repeats the word money. Next point, values or messages. The poem gives a valuable message that wealth is not necessary to be happy in life. The poor people are happy. They have true friends too. The poem tells us the value of money. Last point, my opinion about the poem. In my opinion, money does not bring happiness. Happiness is a state of mind. We must realize the meaning of happiness. The poem taught me what is true happiness in simple language. We should not run after money. Now, in this way, we may write appreciation of the poem Money. Dear children, सर्व कवितांचे पोएटिक अप्रिशिएशन तुमच्या शब्दामध्ये लिहा व त्याचे अधूनमधून रिव्हिजन करा. थँक यू फॉर वॉचिंग. हॅव अ नाईस डे.